Hi, this is Manjula Narayan, books editor, Hindustan Times, and today I have with me Namita Gokhale, who is, she's written this book, Jaipur Journals, a love letter to the greatest literary show on earth. And she's also one of the
Co-founder, co-director.
Co-founder,
To be politically correct.
Of the Jaipur Literature Festival. So, Namita, I started reading this book and it's making me laugh a lot. So maybe we should first, so that the readers know what the book is about, read this out. One of the founders and directors of the world's largest free literary festival presents a moving novel that searches the inspirations and heartbreaks of that loneliest of tribes, the writers. Meet a colorful cast of characters whose lives intersect and collide in the sea of stories that is the Jaipur Literature Festival. The icon of queer literature who receives a malevolent anonymous letter, the burglar with a passion for poetry, the child prodigy who's determined to make it to the top, the American writer looking for the vanished India of her youth, the lonely writer in her 70s who carries her unpublished novel in a canvas bag wherever she goes, all come to life between the covers of Jaipur Journals. Like the festival itself, Jaipur Journals is a mixed bag of tales told from multiple perspectives. This funny, pacey, metafictional novel is a sure-footed romp across the landscape of the literary world, showcasing in full form Gokhale's unsparing eye and unput-downable style. Unsparing eye, that is true. I got scared when I started reading.
Why did you get scared?
Well, I was hoping that I wouldn't,
You were wondering when a curly-haired literary critic would come in and say the wrong things.
Yeah. Well, no. But, I saw, it's clear that you're a very keen observer of people, But one can't tell, you can't tell whether these characters are inspired by a particular person, which is good.
They're not. Nobody is.
So
they're inspired by a whole matrix of people that I've met and the things that define them. But I'd say that those who are inspired by anybody, I've carried their name. I've got Shashi Tharoor on stage talking about troglodytes. I've got Javed Akhtar. And I realized when I was flipping through the book yesterday, there's also a mention of Rupi Kaur. So there are people there.
Yes.
But many people just came to me as not types, because a type sort of makes you think it's a stereotype, but just as the sort of people who writers tend to be.
And this international cast of characters, clearly you've met, they all actual cast of characters comes to Jaipur every year, so you know them.
Not only Jaipur, but the 8 international editions. So I go to them and I spend most of my life meeting with writers. Sadly, in the Jaipur Festival, I meet them only when somebody's lost their iPad or something like that. But in the other smaller festivals, I do get to spend time with them. We have festivals, if I may sound boastful, in London at the British Library in Belfast, JLF in Houston, JLF in New York, JLF in Boulder, Colorado, JLF in Toronto, Adelaide, and Doha. So when I go to these festivals, I've already programmed them. So I know about those writers, but when I meet them, I learn so much about the things they write about, because I have more time to spend, it's a more intimate atmosphere. But I realize that writers are the same the world over.
Really?
There's not such a big difference between them.
So somebody from Iceland is as cussed as somebody from India?
The only difference is that, and it used to be, that the Indian writers, especially the Indian language writers, used to be a little more fluid on time. They wouldn't wrap up by the clock.
Okay.
But they do now.
Okay.
Because that was the old literary culture here of things spilling over. So apart from the time factor, they are the same. And when my editor helped me put down this line, that loneliest of tribes, the writers, I sort of giggled and I said, with all these lit fests, where would they have time to be lonely? But of course,
I often wonder, where do they have the time to write?
But they do, and they are driven by writing. And let's face it, it is not the best profession in the world. They say you can't make a living, though you may make a windfall or a fortune.
You might. Yeah.
So, and you're making yourself vulnerable because you're putting your deepest thoughts and your loneliest aches and pains and your fears and your aspirations out there to be mocked, or even worse, to be ignored. That you put 4 years of your life into a book, and finally, if you're lucky, it becomes this physical creature with a cover and a spine and a illustration. And then it goes into the deep six. Sometimes I've seen people pushing for one review.
Yes.
That's one end of the spectrum. And it's not that they are any less talented writers. It's just that it's not their moment.
Yeah.
One of the things I believe, which has nothing to do with this book, but I do believe that every book has a kundali. It has a destiny. And that book, which is meant to do well, will find its way in its moment. And that book, however wonderful it may be, if the moment is not there, and I found that with my own books. I do hope the moment has arrived for this one, but it's true. So it's a thankless profession. And writers are, in that sense, they do sincerely put all they can into the book. And those who are writing formula bestsellers, they don't have better luck also.
No, they don't.
They don't. We don't know what sells a book. You ask any publisher, what makes a book sell? And if they're honest, they'll say, we don't know.
You just have to keep trying, I guess.
You've got to keep trying. And it's because you have that story to tell, or that story to share, or even that story to unwind and explain to yourself. And usually I find writers, the best writers, are writing for themselves. But that sounds far too serious for such a funny book. Let's have a...
So you're saying this is resolutely not literary fiction?
Well, I've written 18 books now, by the way. And of those, a lot around myth, a lot about the mountains, Himalayas, and I think 9 novels, or 9 what they call works of fiction, including short stories. And one is a novel for children. I'm very delighted with that. I'm reasonably fond of all my books, but I do recognize that the genre of lit fic, of determinedly literary fiction, has the tendency to become a little narcissistic, a little over introspective, and is getting less readers in. Though, of course, they are ones that work brilliantly. So, and this novel couldn't have been lit fic because it's about lit fic. So there had to be some lines drawn.
Okay. And you know what what I like about it is how you've kind of taken the most, you've taken things like, well, you're going to get some flack for this. You've taken feminism of the radical kind and made fun of it.
I haven't made fun of it, but I've made fun of some of the ideological obsessions that accompany it on stage, which they do.
Okay.
People, the tendency to use big words for simple things has never appealed to me much.
Also things like wokeness, about which I have to read this section, which made me laugh out loud. Lol.
Please do.
Okay. So it's this bit about a session that's going on at the Jaipur Literature Festival on stage. Okay.
You're sounding like canned laughter, like Navjot Sidhu in that show.
Sorry. Okay. The panel on the second sex was in full swing. A French-Algerian writer, a radical gender-fluid diaspora novelist, a sexual rights activist, a gentleman from the French Book Office, and a gentleman from the French Book Office. An elderly lady from Kolkata who had translated Simone de Beauvoir in Bangla was also on the panel, but she hadn't yet been allowed to say anything. Okay,
it happens.
So it happens, huh? You should know. I mean, you probably know all these quirks inside out. So I'm like skipping a few paragraphs, which are very funny, but well. Simone de Beauvoir's Bangla translator Shonali Sen made a play for the mic. As she fumbled with the folds of her sari and pulled up the sleeves of a thick hand-knitted cardigan, Leela Nafisi took hold of the conversation. "What I want to ask you is this," she said. "What I want to ask you is this. How many of us remember Simone de Beauvoir's seminal work, The Ethics of Ambiguity?" Zoya Mankotia snatched the mic from Leela Nafisi. "I want you to withdraw that," she hissed. "I demand that you expunge the inappropriate and insensitive use of the word seminal. Words have power. They have responsibility. They have meaning. Nafisi ignored her and continued valiantly, although there was a slight quaver in her voice. Simone de Beauvoir's seminal work, The Ethics of Ambiguity, was overshadowed by the phenomenal success of The Second Sex, by the entirely patriarchal character of the philosophical canon, and by her being considered a mere acolyte of Jean-Paul Sartre. Zoya Mankotia was frothing, and her grey and black tresses had fallen loose of the band that held them in place. Will you kindly withdraw the use of the word seminal? She said, trying to keep control over herself. Leela Nafisi raised an eyebrow gently, as though in slow motion. I am puzzled, Madam Mankotia, she said. If you speak of gender fluidity with such conviction, how can you disallow me the use of this word, this gendered and fluid word, this innocent semen? Shonali Sen re-entered the fray. Her voice was clear and articulate. The word for semen in Bangla is birya. In Hindi, it is virya. In French, it is sperm, although seminal remains seminal. The words have very different contexts and connotations. I request you not to get agitated. Yeah.
Well, words can agitate. We know that.
Yeah, we
That's
know
one of the
that.
things
Yeah.
writers know and reviewers know. And this is about the agitations and the backstories of those agitations. And yeah, I must say that I don't ever read my books again, but I was flipping through this and it continues to be funny, just like my first novel, Paro, it continues to be funny.
Yes.
So,
Paro was such a long time ago, but it was like it started a lot of things, right?
and
So-
it was funny.
Yeah,
And
it
it
was
stayed
funny.
in print for 35 years or something.
Yes,
And
I remember reading
young-
it back then.
I meet a lot of people of different generations who remember reading it then.
Yeah, as a
And,
teenager.
and they all say, one of them, who's now a very, very respected and radical editor, told me the other day that it used to be on a shelf above what he could reach in the bookshelf. And he read it, and on page 3 was a line that shocked him. So it's lovely that that book, because as I said, books have a life of their own. So and social comedy ages faster than anything else.
That's true.
So if that social comedy continues to amuse people, or if not to instruct, then it's good.
So now, with this book, do you think are people coming up to you and saying, "Is that me?" or stuff like that?
No. There are no flattering characters who nobody has claimed.
No. They could be scared that they'd like appears.
No. I think when they are reading it, they are wondering if they are there. Maybe they are disappointed that they are not there, or maybe they are not disappointed. I don't know.
Are they relieved?
The way I am looking at it, rather, I ask people who have read the book, I say, who was your favorite character? Because for me, among the 5 or 6 principal characters, it's quite a giveaway who their favorite character is. So I've got my own personality test, which I won't share with you, about the sort of person whose favorite character is Rudrani Rana, or whose favorite character is Betab, or Zoya, or Anirban, or so many others.
It says something about the person. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so tell me, what was the difficult part about, this is a general question I always ask, difficult part about writing this book?
It wasn't difficult. Of all
At
the
all.
books I've ever written, there are quite a few, this one was perhaps one of the easiest. It's because I knew the subject so well. I didn't have to Google anything about the Jaipur Lit Fest. I know every rock and stone of the gardens. I know it, it's a part of my life. I feel that all of us have 2 novels inside us. One is the life we have lived, and one is the life we might have lived. This is strictly in the life I have lived bit. And I thought earlier it might be a bit presumptuous to try to appropriate this great festival into my own little novel. But then it's not about the festival. The festival is also there as a character in the novel. It's in the background. But actually, these stories could have happened elsewhere, though they could possibly have happened more in Jaipur. Jaipur is another character in the novel. But a lot of it is about their backstories and what it is that led them to have the identity kits they have, to write the sort of books they have written, the sort of perspectives they have, the hurts, the aspirations, all that. So it's about the people. And it wrote itself naturally. I carried it around as I always do, like one piece of knitting, or like Rudrani Rana's novel. Whenever I had the time, I would sit down and close my eyes and imagine I was taking off from where I had stopped. And the stories just came to me. It was like
Okay.
watching a film. I mean, I saw Betab going and committing that robbery on the eve.
you shouldn't.
No,
You
no
shouldn't.
giveaways.
No giveaways.
But
No spoilers.
No spoilers. But I saw these scenes enact themselves and I wrote them down. The difficulty, if any, was expertly dovetailing the stories into each other, so no one story would overshadow the other, and that each character had a chance to say what they wanted. So in fact, it was a bit like moderating a panel, giving everybody the mic, not letting poor Bengali lady getting left out.
But don't you talk about panels? Don't you feel like grabbing the mic from some people at Jaipur?
I do.
Oh yeah, you do.
In fact, I've now stopped attending the sessions themselves because I work so hard at the cues and working out what will be the best way for them to enact themselves. That if I'm in the audience, I'm more worried. Why isn't she holding the mic closer?
Yeah,
And
there's
I
one
keep-
bit where she holds the mic
Yeah.
too close to her mouth and everything's
I
muffled.
keep saying mic, mic,
The sound going off.
Yeah. So I say better to, because it's not my intentions are not going to help at that stage.
That is true.
Because a festival is installation art. It's, you may have the most brilliant panel, but somebody may have a stomachache, somebody may have the wrong chemistry.
Oh, yeah.
It just happens. You never know what will take off. And sometimes you may have a panel where there's somebody who's just on fire that day, and they just get everybody else on fire. And that session wakes people up, makes people listen. You get talis, you get boos. But for me, the whole point of a Lit Fest is to take these books and to take writers and to take ideas and to take debates out of the strict structure that we follow, the protocols of reviews, the protocol of the interview, and let's have some anger, some appreciation, let's have some real conversations, but with respect on stage. So that's what works for me.
Okay. And there's also some pathos. I mean, on the surface, it's a funny, it's a funny novel. I mean, these fun people, you're sending up wokeness, especially, which I found great. Which, of course, you're going to get some criticism for.
I don't know.
But
I think people all like a good giggle and they have the
that's
heart
true.
to laugh at themselves.
That's
Everybody does.
Okay. So, but behind that, there's also, this pathos, like that writer who you introduced first, who, multiple surrogates and families, and, he's grown up
Quentin.
like that. Quentin? Is
Quentin
it?
Cripps.
Yes.
I forget
him.
the names of my
So,
characters, but yes, that is Quentin Cripps.
There are also these characters, and even that lady who meets Sumedh Kumar across the room, and he's the first man that
But
he
by the way,
meets.
a lot of
You know.
ex-lovers seem to bump into each other in the Jaipur
I
Literature Festival. I don't know why, but it actually happens. I don't know.
And do you have to deal with this?
No, I have not had to deal with it, but I've heard the stories. So here's somebody, Gayatri, who is an academic. And I've seen this again and again. She's an academic and a historian who's trying to write a novel. And often an academic manages to write a good novel, but sometimes they don't have that sense of abandon. It's a different
That fire.
discipline.
Yeah.
So, in the end of the novel, she has found the man she loved. We are not sure if she loves him still or whether he's worthy of being loved. But here she is going to the closing party on the last day, the author's ball. And here, I'll read out a bit, which will give a sense of it. And you can
The
edit.
author's ball.
She had brought a garland of bright orange marigold flowers from the woman who had set up a stall outside the shrine. She wrapped her double-spaced, spiral-bound manuscript. All of us have these double-spaced, spiral-bound manuscripts, we writers, in the strings of marigold and walked alongside the lake. The sunset was the color of the marigold flowers. She had hurled the packet into the water, where it landed with a soft plop. I want to live life, not write about it, she had told herself. She couldn't recall if she had spoken the words out loud or said them softly to herself in her thoughts. The Heart Has Its Reasons, which was her novel, all the carefully thought out phrases, the commas and pauses, the corrected spellings, the thesaurus consultations, the unities of plot and character, of time and action were thrown into the waters of the man-made Mansagar lake. It was a symbolic gesture, an affirmation of intent, a return to herself. Life, not words, she said again, out loud this time. The shadows had set in. The marigold flowers had settled in the shallow water. The crimson and orange of the sunset had departed the sky. The spiral-bound manuscript would dissolve and disintegrate. The ink would become one with the paper. The paper would become pulp. Only the plastic spiral binding would remain, its skeletal presence like the vestige of some ancient marine life. And I think that's a very important part of the writing life as well, to know when you don't have a story to tell and then say, okay, I won't tell that story through a novel, I'll tell it through my life or through my actions or through so many other ways. So giving up on a novel is a very important and underrated exercise. The tragic bits I'm not reading out because they need a build-up.
Yeah.
We've been giggling so much, we'll do that another day.
Okay. So go out and get this book. It's funny in parts. I mean, I've begun and it's like funny. And of course, like I said, there's pathos as well. So that's Jaipur Journals.
It's like a Hindi movie. सब कुछ है, emotion है, pathos है, थोड़ी crime है,
थोड़ी stand-up है,
हर
सब
चीज़
कुछ
है.
है. Okay.
So do read it, and I hope all of you enjoy reading it and have a good laugh and shed a few tears as well, which is the story of all our lives, really, isn't it?
Okay. So thank you so much.
Fun. Now you have to tell me who your favorite character was.